This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randall. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randall has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here is the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randall.
And as I promised, each week we will return, and I have done so. This is, in fact, A Different Perspective, and I truly am Kevin Randall. I'm joined by Irena McCammon Scott, who is actually a PhD, Dr. Scott. She's an American author and a physiologist. She received a BS from The Ohio State University. I wanted everybody to know I know exactly what the name of the organization is. An MS from the University of Nevada and a PhD from the University of Missouri in the Department of Veterinary Medicine. Her postdoctoral studies were done at Cornell University. So she's been around the college campuses quite a bit. She has been employed as an assistant professor, Department of Biology at St. Bonaventure University, and has done research and teaching at The Ohio State University. I always like to do that. I don't know why. She's also taught at the University of Missouri and the University of Nevada, and at the Battelle Memorial Institute. She was a correspondent for Popular Mechanics magazine, with articles appearing in the Technology Update and Science sections. She has worked as a volunteer astronomer at The Ohio State University Radio Telescope in Delaware, Ohio. She is the author of 6 books and has contributed chapters and articles to numerous scientific journals, magazines, newspapers. Her listings include Who's Who in the World Who's Who of Women, Who's Who in the Midwest, the Dictionary of International Biography, and Who's Who in the Frontier Science and Technology. What an impressive resume. Welcome to A Different Perspective, Dr. Scott.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Your latest book, which I did not mention on purpose, is called UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Misinformation, and Government Cover-Up. In the few moments, and I say, we just got a couple of minutes here before we have to take a break, can you tell me a little bit about the book, and we'll then continue on in the next segment?
Okay, it's for sale on Amazon.com. I generally presented it in chronological order from the beginning of the modern UFO idea in 1947, around that time, to today. And so I cover the historical aspects and also try to cover the cover-up.
And when you say you started with the modern era, you're talking about the Arnold sighting in June of 1947?
I present some information that maybe the government knew something about UFOs before that, but I start on that idea that came in 1947 that they might be ET craft.
But you didn't look at the Foo Fighters, the Ghost Rockets, or anything that preceded the Arnold sighting?
No, I looked at some of it, and that's why I was presenting some evidence that I thought the government probably knew about the subject before Arnold's sighting.
And by that you mean about UFOs in some fashion, before Arnold's sighting exploded on the world? Did you find anything specific about the Arnold sighting that you found interesting or new?
I found all kinds of things that were interesting and new, and it would take me half an hour to describe them. One thing, before the Arnold sighting, one thing we discovered was that Cordell Hull, who was the Secretary of State under Roosevelt, he had a cousin, and the cousin visited him. He was very high up. He was he was Secretary of State for the longest time of any. He was called the Father of the United Nations, and Roosevelt wanted him for his running mate when he ran for president. So he was high up in the government.
Well, let me interrupt you here because we're going to have to take our first break. But you're talking about Cordell Hull, who was the Secretary of State under Roosevelt and had some knowledge of UFOs prior to July of 1947. And we'll look into that when we come back in just a few minutes. For more information about UFOs and this sort of thing, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And I often forget to mention the other fine programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, which you can listen to and learn about the paranormal and also other aspects of it like that, so that it's something you might move into a different arena. But we will be back right after this, so please stick around. Yes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Hello, I'm Pete Marsh. With my daughter Justina, we will be presenting the new radio show, Too Good to Be True. If something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But with the help of Justina's amazing gifts, we're going to gain insight into questions that don't yet have complete answers. Have you wondered who built Stonehenge and for what reason? Why are crop circles found in the same region as Stonehenge and elsewhere? Are crop circles a hoax, or are they created with technologies that we have little knowledge of? Who built the pyramids in Egypt and also in other countries? How and why were they built? Was the Titanic switched with the Britannic as part of a gigantic insurance fraud, or for more insidious reasons? What caused the Tunguska event when trees were flattened over an 800 square mile area in Siberia? Will the new insights be too good to be true? Well, that will depend on what you are prepared to believe. Please join us as we start on this journey together. For more information on Too Good to Be True, visit www.xzbn.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Proving that I have not lied about this, we are in fact back. I am joined by Dr. Irena Scott, whose book is UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Misinformation, and Government Cover-Up, which is available at Amazon.com. And I think the publisher is Philip Mantle, or you're associated with Philip Mantle, who is a well-known UFO researcher, entrepreneur. He's been involved in UFO research for a long time, so he's quite knowledgeable of what's going on. When we went away, you were mentioning Cordell Hull and suggesting that he was aware, or he had a relative who was aware of UFOs prior to the Arnold sighting. Can you kind of give us a brief examination of that?
Well, his cousin was a minister, and he went to see Cordell Hull once and visited him in Washington. And he said that Hull took him down to a sub-basement, a hidden sub-basement of the Capitol, and showed him bodies that were in big jars of formaldehyde. He called them creatures, and some kind of, he called it a craft, I think. And the cousin told his daughters about that, and he told them not to say anything about it for many, many years after both of them died. But both of them died, and eventually they talked about it, and so that's who we interviewed, was the daughters.
You interviewed the daughters. So Cordell Hull didn't talk about this to anybody that we can look at. It's a relative of his who talked about it. Is that correct?
That's right. We found nothing that he had published about, but we sort of speculated about that he was founder of United Nations, and maybe he was influenced by something like that. It was 1939, they think, approximately.
So I was going to say, do we have a date on this thing? So you're saying this was 1939, so it predates Roswell by a number of years, 8 years. And I was thinking that you might be relating it back to the Cape Girardeau crash from, was it 1941, I believe? But you're suggesting it even predates that.
Uh-huh.
And what you did was you talked to the daughters of the man who talked to Hull. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was his cousin that talked to him, and we interviewed one daughter, but the one daughter said the other daughter remembered something about it too. We talked to the older daughter, and she remembered more.
But hasn't this information been published before?
We published it on our local, I think we were the first that published it. We published it in our local newsletter.
Okay, all right. But when we're talking about something new and different, you mentioned the Arnold sighting. I mean, the Arnold sighting is the point that we all kind of begin at, even though UFO, modern era of UFOs began in I believe in World War II with the Foo Fighters. But you start with the Arnold sighting and move on from that. And I noticed you talked about the Maury Island evidence. Can you talk a little bit about Maury Island for us?
Yes, I didn't include too much on the Foo Fighters because everybody kind of knew about it, and I didn't want to take a whole lot of space on my book on everything. When Arnold had his sighting, which is June the 24th, 1947. There were several other reports. One was a prospector who appeared to have been seeing the same objects that Arnold saw, and he said when they approached, his compass spun, which was kind of a funny thing. And then there was an aircraft, a pilot for a commercial airline, Captain Smith, who saw 9 objects that may have been like Arnold's, but not at the same time. There was
wait. The Captain Smith sighting took place like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I didn't mean I said it wasn't the same sighting at the same time, but he might have seen something that looked like the same objects.
Okay, all right.
It was at the same time. I'm sorry.
But I was trying to get us toward the Maury Island sighting. What was that all about?
Okay,
that predated Arnold by 3 or 4 days.
Yes, it did, and it's generally considered a hoax. And I read Arnold's book and some other things, and it appears that people thought it was a hoax by 2 men, Chrisman and Dow, who claimed they were harbor patrolmen, and that the one Dow was in his boat with his boy and his dog over Maury Island, and some donut-shaped UFOs flew over and dropped debris, and that was the main point of his report. And it's normally considered a hoax, but as I looked into it more and more, I thought it was a more advanced hoax than 2 men could have done.
Well, when you say more advanced hoax, you mean that the story was too complex for these 2 guys to have invented?
Yeah, I thought it was a lot more complex than the 2 people could have done.
Are you suggesting there might be some validity to this sighting?
No, I wasn't suggesting that.
Okay.
I was suggesting that they might have been a part of a much bigger hoax and were maybe doing what somebody else was telling them to say.
And do we have an idea who that might be?
No. I would
have said Ray Palmer, but that would be just me.
Well,
and for those who don't know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for those that don't know, Ray Palmer was the editor of Amazing Stories science fiction magazine in the 1940s, and he was very excited about some stories that he had published before Arnold that suggested some kind of flying objects, not from interstellar space, from the inner Earth. So anyway, that's who Ray Palmer is for those who want to know. But you don't know who might have been pulling the strings for Chrisman and Dahl then?
No, some of the references say Ray Palmer, but I thought it was more complex than what Ray Palmer could have done either. So I just wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but it seemed awfully strange.
Well, why do you think it was more complex than these 2 guys could have pulled off? What kind of leads you in that direction?
Well, for one thing, he reported it, and he was a very qualified pilot.
He being Arnold, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
He was as qualified as you could come. He flew this very difficult to fly airplane and knew his way around all the mountains and everything in that area, which was near Tacoma, Washington, and all through there, and Mount Rainier and everything. And he was just very well qualified and very good at flying and very intelligent. And
well,
so,
nobody's questioning Kenneth Arnold. What I'm asking is where the Maury Island case, which is separate from Arnold for the most part. I know they get involved in it later on, but the Maury Island case, where are we going with that? What are you suggesting there about it being more complex? Are you suggesting a government hoax here or a government tie-in? Are you suggesting what exactly are you suggesting here?
I'm suggesting it must be a government tie-in, and there's reason to think that, but there seem to be some other elements that were even more complex than a government tie-in would be. For example, when he reported that, it was the 24th of June, and these were aircraft that he very carefully studied and calculated the.
We're back to Arnold. We're back to Arnold, and because we're playing with a couple of cases here, we got Chrisman and Dahl, and we got Arnold and Ray Palmer now, and Captain Smith, who was a commercial airline pilot. When you say he, you've got to tell us who he is so we can keep track of which player we're talking about.
This was Arnold.
Yes.
Okay. And he reported these objects flying over the United States. He gave a very good report. It was all over the newspapers. And one would expect the government to contact him because the government was very concerned about flying objects over our airspace. But, and he wondered why the government didn't contact him. And it was not until the middle of July that the government contacted him. Patterson contacted him. And that seemed very odd on the part of the government that they wouldn't be interested in these things flying over the United States. And it also made me think that maybe the government knew something about him, because I would think they would contact him real fast if they didn't.
So Arnold has his sighting of the objects, and I think the headline says mystery objects in fast flight and things like that. He said that they move like a saucer skipping across the pond, and the term flying saucers was born out of that. And Arnold eventually made a report to the military, and at the time it would have been the Army Air Forces as opposed to the United States Air Force. And the file, we have the file in the Project Blue Book file is available for anybody who wants to see it online now. So we've got a very good sighting there. It is sort of corroborated by this prospector named Johnson, although he doesn't report his sighting until after Arnold's sighting is reported in the newspaper, so there could be contamination there. Then we get to the Maury Island sighting with Chrisman and Dahl. So I do not understand why you think there is something more to that site. Suggesting that there's a wider spread hoax here than just Dahl and Chrisman making something up. I don't understand how you came to that conclusion.
Well, I didn't. I was just giving evidence from what Arnold said that seemed strange to me. One of them was, for example, the government took a long time to contact him. Another thing was that he flew into Tacoma Arnold did, to investigate the Maury Island sighting, which Raymond Palmer was paying him to do. I don't know if he was very thrilled about it, but he flew in, and so far as I could tell from the book, I read his original book, he didn't seem to tell anybody he was going. He landed in Tacoma, and he looked for a hotel room. He looked all over. He was unable to find a hotel room. And so finally, he called the most expensive hotel in town and asked, and there was a room reserved for Kenneth Arnold. This seemed strange, and he thought there must be another Kenneth Arnold. So he decided to take the room and move out when the other Kenneth Arnold came, but no Kenneth Arnold ever came. And that sounded kind of like something that somebody had hoaxed. Also,
well, wouldn't maybe Ray Palmer, who knew he was going to go to Tacoma, Washington, have booked the room for him?
Well, if he did, he didn't tell him.
But I would think that would be a logical conclusion that Ray Palmer is the source of this mysterious hotel room.
Well, I don't know, because there seemed to be, he just called it the lark. He didn't know there was going to be anybody there, that would be reserved in his name. But there was some other things that happened that made it sound like it was bugged.
Okay, well, we're going to get into that in just a moment. I've got to take a quick break here so that we can pay a few bills for the X-Zone Broadcast Network and everybody else. As I say, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. The book is by Irena Scott, UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Misinformation, and Government Cover-Up. It's on Amazon.com. Philip Mantle is involved in it. And I've looked at the book. It's a very nice-looking book. I mean, the way it's laid out and all that is very impressive. So we will return in just a moment with Irena Scott and talk a little bit more about Kenneth Arnold and his mysterious sighting.
Dreams are our personal gateways into infinite wisdom. Don't miss shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Corcoran's inspiring book, Shamanic Awakening Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles Sandra's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers and her initiations throughout the Americas and across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt. Sandy's knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth influenced her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private tarot readings, international journeys, a meditative CD, as well as her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate this earth walk, creating a deeper connection to yourself and all that is. Find this and more at Sandy's website, starwalkervisions.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
I have returned. As I promised, I'm with Irena Scott, Dr. Scott. Her book is UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Misinformation, and Government Cover-Up, available at Amazon.com, even as we speak. When we left, we were talking about Kenneth Arnold. He'd gone to Tacoma, Washington to investigate the Maury Island UFO sighting, the incident reported by Chrisman and Dahl, where apparently a UFO shed some material, maybe have landed on the Maury Island, left material there, allegedly injuring, I think it was Dahl's son, and killing their dog, and Chrisman was involved in all of this as well. We have Arnold now in Tacoma, apparently to interview Chrisman and Dahl, and he's found his hotel room. So let's go from it. You were about to say there were some other mysterious things going on at that time. Let's look at those.
Well, there were a number of mysterious things that went on. For one thing, when he found Dahl's phone, he found the phone book and Dahl's number in his hotel room, and he called Dow. And Dow was supposed to be hoaxing, which he probably was. But he also warned Arnold off and said, "Go home. You don't want to get mixed up with this." And then he told Arnold this story about it would be what would be called a Men in Black encounter today. And Men in Black came in about 1960s. But he told Arnold that he'd been on Maury Island. Nobody else was there except his son and dog. And that this mysterious man wearing black came and told him about the whole episode that had happened to him, even though he was the only one there. And then the man in black threatened him and said if he wanted his family to stay healthy, he better shut up. And this seemed kind of out of place in time, because nobody had ever heard of Men in Black until the 1960s.
But you're kind of applying a phenomenon, the Men in Black, to something that happened in 1947, and we really don't. What we know about Dahl is he's involved in a hoax. So why would we believe that this tale he's telling Arnold is true?
Well, I was saying I don't think it was true, but I don't know why he said that at that time. But I don't think, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just writing down what confused me, and these things confused me pretty good.
So I assume that Arnold interviewed Dahl and Chrisman at his hotel, and they told him the story of the flying saucer, the UFO, donut-shaped UFO, if you will. What did Arnold do after that? What was Arnold's reaction? How did he investigate?
What he did later was that government men came to talk to him finally after Wright-Patterson.
Government men, you mean two officers from the 4th Air Force in California, Brown and Davidson. Two Army Air Forces officers involved in intelligence came to Tacoma and talked to Arnold while he was there. Correct?
I think they visited him twice. The first time I think was at his home, and Lieutenant Frank Brown and Captain William Davidson, and they were the Air Force, the Army investigators, but they seemed very interested in the UFOs and told him they were practically bug-eyed for watching for them. And that was strange because later the government seemed to cover up everything and always debunk UFOs.
But I mean, in July of 1947, June of 1947, the government had no idea what was going on. They're as confused as Arnold would have been, as we would have been had we been there at the time. So these guys are sent out to investigate this mysterious sighting. So I can't really see anything preposterous in them suggesting that they were interested in it and maybe excited about what Arnold had seen. I don't see any problem there. And didn't Brown actually tell Arnold that if there was anything else he wanted to talk to him about or anything else came up, that he should contact him at 4th Air Force headquarters there in California?
That's right.
And so Arnold, while in Tacoma, calls Brown and Davidson and says, "Hey, I've got another case here you guys might be interested in."
Well, what happened was he called Brown in California at the air base, which was where he worked and where he was an investigator of UFOs. But Brown hung up and took the call from an outside line, which seemed really funny to me because he was the official investigator, and why would he be taking the call from Arnold, who he said to call him there, from an outside line? That was another thing that didn't make sense to me.
Maybe the Audubon system wasn't working really well.
Well,
I throw that in. Audubon was in the 1960s. The Army had a special internal phone system called the Audubon, and you could tap into it by calling certain numbers, and it would be Audubon, and it would be charged to the government, not the local phone. So it could be something as simple as that. Brown trying to get it from a different line or a different perspective. I don't see anything mysterious about that. But so anyway, Brown and Arnold are talking, and Brown and Davidson decide to go to Tacoma to interview Arnold.
And one other thing that seemed real funny to me was that when Arnold flew to Tacoma, he had another sighting, and that didn't make the news at all. But these were 20 to 25 brass-colored objects that were small UFOs, like 30 inches or something in diameter. And they flipped as they went, and they looked like the larger UFOs he saw. But to me, that wouldn't be. It might have been something connected with the UFO phenomenon instead of with the government or Palmer or anything else, because they didn't have any drones in or anything else that would do that. And
but we're in Tacoma. We got Dahl and Chrisman and Davidson and the other fellow whose name escaped me at the moment, Frank Brown. And we now have Arnold there. He's called his pal E.J. Smith, who is the airline pilot, and they're all meeting in Arnold's room at the most exclusive hotel in Tacoma, Washington. And what transpires there? Is there anything interesting that transpires at that point? I mean, they're all sitting around talking about this stuff, this sighting. They've got samples of the material that I think they put into a breakfast food box, a cornflakes box. What was Brown's and Davidson's reaction to the story? What did they think?
Well, for one thing, they showed Arnold the fragments. And let me see, it was Dow that invited Arnold to his secretary's house, which he said was his secretary's house. And the secretary's house looked very normal. It was just a normal house. The secretary was there sorting through papers in her kitchen and everything. And he showed Arnold these fragments. Later, what happened was that the Brown and Davidson, they thought it was a hoax too, as Arnold Smith thought, and they had an air show coming up the next day, and so they wanted to fly back to California, and Arnold thought they were tired and thought they shouldn't go, but they decided to go. Their airplane had been under guard the whole time they were there, and what happened was that even though the military men didn't want the fragments and had no interest in them, well, Dow and Chrisman wanted to put the fragments in the plane. And so Arnold said he lifted the box of fragments onto the plane. And he said they didn't look anything like the fragments they showed him. And that the box seemed a lot heavier. And so then the men took off and their plane exploded, was what they heard.
Did anybody survive?
I think two people survived, but neither of the two were Brown and Davidson.
So Brown and Davidson are flying the aircraft back to Hamilton Army Airfield in California. The plane actually catches on fire. The two passengers bail out successfully and are rescued, but Brown and Davidson are killed as the airplane began to break up in, I guess, midair. So it's really kind of a coincidental aircraft accident, isn't it?
It could be. I just don't know. I was just listing what I thought was odd. And what I thought was odd was that Arnold didn't think the fragments were what he had been shown, which seemed a little funny. And also their airplane was in top condition because they were going to be in an air show the next day and had been under guard. So it just seemed a bit strange to me that it would explode.
Well, I'm a former military pilot, and while flying in Vietnam, I'd flown all day in one aircraft, and we were going to evacuate the airfield that night because of rumors of enemy action. And I was assigned a new co-pilot, and I thought, the aircraft has been flying all day. There's no need to check it. And he crawled up on the tail boom to check the tail rotor, which we did every morning that way. And the linkage came apart in his hands. So here I'm flying an aircraft that had been perfectly functionable 30 minutes before, and now the linkage on the tail rotor had fallen apart. So I don't think there's anything that unusual or that suspicious about this airplane just because it had been in on an airfield or whatnot in another location. I don't see that as suspicious at all.
Well, I wasn't saying that this was. I just said this is my list of things that seem strange to me. I didn't mean that I knew that this was a advanced hoax or anything else. I just meant I was listing the things that just seemed strange to me.
Well, it seems to me what we've got here is Chrisman. By the way, Chrisman had been in contact with Ray Palmer in 1946. And there's a letter published in Amazing Stories magazine from Chrisman, I believe it was, about Lemuria, and one of Ray Palmer's favorite topics that suggested that UFOs, flying saucers, were from the inner Earth. And when the Arnold sighting happened, Palmer was excited simply because it suggested that there was truth to the inner Earth story. So I think that's why Palmer got excited, and that's why he got Arnold involved in that whole thing. But I think we've kind of exhausted this story. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a couple other things in UFOs today, 70 years of lies, misinformation, and government cover-up with Dr. Irena Scott. I will have more about this on my blog at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And as I always say, if you're interested in the Roswell case, specifically take a look at Roswell in the 21st century, and we cover that. I also did a book called The UFO Government Files, where I cover some of this stuff as well as Dr. Scott has done. You can take a look at that and get, well, I will say it, a different perspective on that sort of thing, which I think is important. And I don't say it enough, but for those of you, take a look at the X Zone Broadcast Network and look at the other fine shows that are broadcast there, and give a listen to some of them, because I think you'll be excited about what you hear. So we'll be back in just a moment, so please stick around. Me.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A Soul Balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world. There's a legend shared by many indigenous cultures of a time when the nations were cast to the 4 corners of the world. Each nation was given a body of sacred knowledge that held a different portion of the truth to preserve. True reality could not be known until all the nations reunited, combining the information. If a single one was missing, the world could not be reborn and darkness would prevail. The Science of Magic Radio is dedicated to reuniting the sacred knowledge. With the understanding, none of us has all the answers, but together we can open new perceptions and possibilities. Through our combined vision, the world can be reborn into a place where darkness no longer prevails. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, or visit us at thescienceofmagic.net.
I am back with Dr. Irena Scott from The Ohio State University. We're talking about UFOs today, 70 years of lies, misinformation, and government cover-ups, available at Amazon.com. We had been talking about Kenneth Arnold, the Maury Island case, and that sort of thing, and some of the strange phenomenon around that. But there was one thing that intrigued me about this book, and it's something that has been bandied about on the internet lately, and you report on a guy named Forgus who claimed he was a deputy sheriff in Texas, Big Spring, Texas, I think, who had an opportunity to view some of the wreckage of the Roswell crash or was involved in that some fashion. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the information came to the publisher, and there's been a lot published on Roswell, many books and everything else. And so we came across this information and discussed whether to say anything. And we decided to. We don't in any way think it proves Roswell or disproves Roswell or anything else. It's just information. And we decided to put a small blip about it in for just to put it in a public domain, and in case we found anything else interesting about it. So he was a deputy sheriff. There's a lot of things that don't quite go together, and I kind of discussed them in the book. But he went with a sheriff he was in Big Springs, and he was traveling with a sheriff to Roswell to pick up a prisoner. And along the way, they heard on the police radio that there was a crash. And so they decided to go see it. And they came upon it. I suppose they knew the local roads and everything, because I don't know what the roads were like back then.
They were crummy.
Yeah.
Really, really crummy. And in fact, today they're really, really crummy in parts of New Mexico.
Well, I've driven around Texas, and I've been in Big Springs and Roswell, but I haven't been between the two. But I figure they're about the same as what I was used to. Anyway, they heard about this crash, and so they went to see it. And he said there were a lot of military people around. There was an object that was about 100 feet in diameter that was round, and 4 bodies, which you couldn't see very well. And he said they looked like they were smaller than people, and when the wind blew some parts of them away, they looked like they had feet like people and big eyes. But anyway, he said they were being lifted by a crane into a truck, and then they told him to leave, and he and the sheriff left, and they went to Roswell and picked up the prisoner and went back home. But they didn't talk too much to anybody, because he said they didn't talk because nobody was interested. But maybe that's because nobody had heard of Roswell, and if they had heard of Roswell, they would have probably been interested. But we just included it because there's so much information and stories about Roswell that we had one, and somebody that actually saw the bodies, so we thought we would include it. We know it doesn't prove anything.
Well, we should say allegedly saw the bodies, and I think that one of the problems is in 1947, Roswell was all over the front pages of the newspapers for 2 days. I mean, even the New York Times was talking about the case and the Roswell case. Granted, they all pretty much said it was a weather balloon, except for the first few papers, such as the Roswell Daily Record and some of the other papers that got the story earlier before their deadlines. But there was a great deal of talk about it. What bothers me about this is clearly he's talking about the event after the military is involved, after the cordons had been set up. And I don't understand, A, how they would have found the site, because it's not visible from the roads. Just hearing about a crash of a UFO in Roswell, you're going to have some kind of directions on how to get there. And they would have run into the military cordon. And I know from talking to people who were there, Judd Roberts comes to mind immediately. He was a minority station owner of KGFL radio in Roswell at the time, that he had attempted to go out the next day and ran into the military cordon, and the military police, the guys running the cordon, had turned him back. I don't understand how a sheriff's deputy from Texas would have been able to penetrate the cordon there. They would have never allowed him close enough to see anything, if he could in fact find the place.
Well, like I said, there's all kinds of holes in this, and so I don't know. Except they might have they might have been traveling more than once to Roswell, and they may have known the little roads that went around. But would be my guess, but I don't know.
I don't see the police radio giving a location. I mean, so that other people could get there. There's no actual motive for the Chaves County Sheriff, which is Roswell, to be talking on the police radio about it on what essentially would be the day after everything is kind of announced. The military cordon is already up. I don't understand how they would have been able to find anything close to that. I don't understand how they would have had an idea of where to go, even if they wanted to see it, nor do I understand how they would have got past the military cordon, because even if the the guys running the roadblock was a low-ranking enlisted man. If he had a question about allowing these civilians, in essence, through, he would have called the sergeant of the guard, who probably would have said, no, they can't come through. And if he couldn't do it, they would have called the officer of the guard, and he would have said, no, don't allow them through. I don't understand how they would have penetrated the cordon.
Well, I don't know either, but that was just part of the story that there's a whole lot of confusion on Roswell with all kinds of stories, and lots of them don't make a bit of sense. I mean, the site where the UFO came down has been moved by different authors all over the place.
Well, we know that the debris field was up near Corona, and everybody agrees on that. The location of the bodies is what's problematic, and frankly, the description provided by this guy sounds amazingly like he was looking at a picture I photographed of the alleged crash site given to us by Frank Kaufman, and it's the perspective is from that photograph. So I find this story really bogus. And if I'm a little disappointed it's getting the play it is in other media, simply because there's no real foundation for it, and you haven't provided me with any sort of evidence that it took place.
Well, I read your article in a different perspective and read your comments on this.
Yes. And thank you for the plug, by the way.
Yes, I'm also reading 3 of your books, including Roswell and the 21st Century, though I haven't read them all through. But one thing I noticed that would be different is you had written the first books about Frank Kaufman and his observations, and that seemed to go to pieces after a while. But you showed...
It became, we learned that Frank Kaufman was making the story up. There's really no question about it. We found the documentation. We found evidence that he had misrepresented himself as a master sergeant when in fact he was only a staff sergeant. He had said he was in intelligence. He was actually basically a personnel clerk. We found an awful lot of things that he had told us weren't true. So the Frank Kaufman story is bogus. There's no other way to put it, and should be reduced to a footnote in the great Roswell Compendium.
Okay, well, I read that, and I'm going through your large book on the 20th century. But you show a picture of the crash site of Frank Kaufman.
Yeah, well, yes, I took a picture. It's in the first or the second Roswell book I did with Don Schmidt. There's a picture of the crash site, and this is what Fergus has described.
I don't know about that, because all the other crash sites were northwest of Roswell. And in the case of this one, Fergus, he came from Big Springs, which was southeast of Roswell. And so this what he was reporting might have been a completely different site, because he didn't say anything about going on past Roswell and coming back. He said that this was on the way to Roswell. And so this might have been a completely different site.
Well, I would say there's really no evidence of that. I find the story hard to believe, but that's just me. I'm going to have to end this here, unfortunately, because we're running out of time. I appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts with us about your book, UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Misinformation, and Government Cover-Up, which you can get at Amazon.com. And like I said, I'm very impressed with your credentials. I believe you still teach at the Ohio State University. And those of you who are interested can take a look at the book and decide for yourselves what you think of it. We will be back next week with another episode. We'll be talking about UFOs, obviously, because that's what we normally talk about here. I always try to point out, and Dr. Scott did a nice job of talking about Roswell in the 21st century, which may help you put the whole thing in some kind of perspective, trying to distill all the information about the Roswell case into kind of a neat package so you can understand where we are today after all the investigation has been done by all the various researchers and all the various people talking about it, and get a much better idea of what happened in Roswell and where we stand today in that investigation. Always take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. You can see my comments on Deputy Fergus's information. And take a look at the other fine programs on the X Zone Broadcast Network, because I think you'll enjoy all of them as well. I will return in 167 hours with another episode. Thank you for listening.